It is incredibly hard to not read ahead in this book. The willpower that it took to just not go on to chapter 3. Okay, we are reading chapter 2, part 1 of The Disorderly Nights by Dorothy Dunnett, which is called Ho Isa. This is a 9-month time skip on from what we've just read, so from Will's wedding. So 9 months and the entire Coulter family are just like, oh my gosh, now we remember why it was actually really peaceful when Lymond wasn't around. Someone please entertain him. They are not having a good time. Piero Strozzi has gone, but there is a Chevalier de Villagagno, Knight of the Order St. John, who is called, his name is actually Nicholas Durand, looking for Lymond. Lymond this entire time, it's really funny, he's devoted himself to refining his professional skills to excessive limits or undue limits, to the affairs of his family and to keeping out of Sir William Scott's way. So I don't really know, this is on page 15, why Lymond is devoting himself to his professional skills. Perhaps he's just like, is this like tongue-in-cheek? Are we saying professional skills in that he's just been causing mischief this whole time? He has been keeping out of Will's way, which Dunnett then notes it's because Lymond is just basically waiting for Will to get his wife pregnant so that Will will then come back and play with him. Oh my gosh. So he's just like, I'll leave them alone, let them do their thing, and then Will will eventually come back to me. I want to be annoyed at that, but it's actually hilarious. Scott, having got his bride pregnant, was apt to file her as completed business for 8 months at a time. Will. So yeah, we've got Nicholas Durand here. And Tom Erskine, the MVP of the entire book, is definitely seeing that, hey, Francis Crawford and Nicholas Durand would get along. I should have them meet. Which is interesting, because what that tells me is that Tom doesn't think that the Chevalier is like Lymond, because there's no way in hell that Tom would want 2 creatures that are like Lymond coming together. He doesn't want that. He doesn't want chaos to multiply. But so what Tom is probably seeing in the Chevalier is that potentially it's someone who could give Francis some order in his life. So Tom, Mr. Practical, Mr. Let's put everything in order, he's seeing that, I assume. I could be wrong. Anyway, they go to find him, but he's not at home, but Sibylla is. And Sibylla is like initially quite recalcitrant as to where Lymond is and what he's doing. We find out, I'm afraid Francis is with Will Scott, dear, and likely to be gone all day. I put a little love heart next to that because I'm like, yes, they're just hanging out the whole time. This is perfect. And then eventually tells them that they're at Ho Isa's. Initially I was like, oh, of course they're at like a brothel together. But no, we find out they're actually there trying to aid the ladies there in helping the English defect from the English military to go back to England to deplete the English forces. And more than that, they've also going to go help the women now because the English are cottoning on to what's happening at this place. Nicholas Durand is very intrigued about this information, and Sibylla's like, not all of the English visiting Ho Isa survive the experience. So basically the ones who go there for comfort, but then it's found out that they're not necessarily willing to defect, are leaving without a heartbeat. And Will Scott has something to do with it, and Lymond. Actually, no, they don't have anything to do with it. They're just getting killed, and now Francis is like, this is not good. Someone's going to start to realize this, and he's now going to intervene so that, I think he's going to maybe protect the women so that they don't actually fall under heavy suspicion and are not just outright killed by the English, I assume. Anyway, Nicholas Durand wants to go and meet them. And then we switch to the English captain, and he's with Oliver Wilstrop. They go and burn down Ho Ice's house, which is really sad. And I love this little detail, which is on page 19. It's in armour, no one can shrug, but the captain of Roxburgh Castle laughed hollowly inside his helmet. It's just such a cool detail that Dunnett has thought that, oh, people can't shrug in armour, or at least not without extreme difficulty. Like, it's not really going to work. The whole armour has to, like, move up. It's just a cute detail that, like, really put me in that time. I was like, oh, these men are, like, riding around with heavy armour on horseback. Like, it's not easy for them to just do that. We're not in a car listening to our podcast, you know, travelling from place to place. It's just cool. I liked it. Anyway, so this bit I had to read twice because what happens is they burn the house down and then the women on a hill somewhere start yelling at them. It's not women, it's Lymond and Will and a bunch of men. I forgive Dorothy Dunnett for so many details, like how the hell did Lymond really get away with having an Irish accent around Irish and no one picking up that he wasn't actually Irish? How did Lymond get away with, like, keeping his skin super tanned that whole time in Queen's Play, or even when he was dressed up as the Spanish merchant? I will turn a blind eye to that. But for Lymond to pull off being a woman, really? I don't know. So they go up to the women, they're actually about to kill them, but then cannons start firing from beneath their petticoats. And they start killing the English, or they kill about like a whole bunch of them. And then eventually they flee. This is where I was reading on page 20. A light hand on his arm stopped him short. This is Ralph Bulmer. The girl of the hilltop beseeched him, her eyes anxious cisterns of blue. As soon as I read cisterns of blue, I'm like, there's no way that Dunnett is making Lymond dress up as a woman. No, I believe that Lymond would dress up as a woman frequently. That I can believe. That he is fooling Sir Ralph Bulmer that close, I cannot believe. Because it's very true that some men can have very slight builds, but in Queen's Play, and not even like in Game of Kings, like Lymond is easily winning wrestling matches with very highly skilled wrestlers. Even if he isn't the biggest frame man, he needs to have muscle bulk. Like, what? Am I believing this or what? For the merest second, Sir Ralph Bulmer studied her. Her hands were empty and her thin dress innocent of weapons. So he literally then swings her up behind him. Luckily, Sir Ralph is wearing armour, because if he wasn't, it would have been a lot easier for him to feel the fact that Lymond might have a little bit of junk going down in the nether region, pressing right up on his ass. I cannot imagine this. And they're riding saddleless for some reason. I don't understand what happened here. He recovered as the slipped saddle fell. I have a feeling that Lymond has actually made this saddle come off. I reckon somehow Lymond is like, oh, that's Sir Ralph's horse, I'm going to undo the saddle so that it's going to be really hard for him to ride away quickly. Then gets behind him and starts undoing his armour because, okay, and this is where I was like, this has to be Lymond, because the dexterity required to undo armour while someone is galloping from behind them, it's got to be pretty high. Like, and also you've got to be familiar with how to take armour off. Like, it takes a while. It's not slipping out of a nightgown. And not only that, but like, Lymond is the only one to do something so nonsensically funny and ridiculous for no reason as to just be like, I'm riding behind this English captain and I'm not going to kill him. So what should I do? Like, just, I don't know, get him naked for funsies? It's like a Lymond thing to do. He's just having an internal laughter. Lymond's just in it for his own entertainment like 50% of the time. She unfastened all the straps around his middle and undid his shirt. And he's like trying to elbow her to stop Lymond, and he's just like dodging this behind him. It's just such a funny picture. And eventually when he stops, she's gone. He's gone, sorry. The pronouns are now getting me. Soon after that, a half-naked gentleman in breech hose knocked at the door in Upper Nisbet. So Lymond's like ditched his dress somewhere. Oh my gosh. And with great charm went whistling on his way to Jedburgh. With great charm. So Lymond has just like knocked on some random door and just been like, hi, I need a horse and some clothes. Totally. Oh, Lymond. Somehow, are you saying Lymond jumped off a horse like mid-canter or gallop? Did no one notice that? Oh, because he was behind his troop. Anyway, this whole thing is mildly / massively unbelievable, but I'm just gonna roll with it because it's way more fun to roll with it. We will ignore this. And I'm assuming Lymond had like a wig of some variety. I mean, even like mistaking in the distance a bunch of men in dresses for a bunch of women, that I can understand. But then up close, I can't. And they were pretty close. So we go back to Will and Tom, and now we've got Nicholas Durand there. So we find out that Will and Lymond are basically treading carefully around this whole area. They don't want to outright attack the English because, and I have to remind myself that this is very old school, like these whores are essentially not looked at kindly by anyone, and the Queen is like, do not go defending any whores and have men die in the process or I'll put you in jail. So they're trying to just basically scare the English away without doing like a full frontal assault, which is what this was, except I totally don't believe that. This was just Lymond having a whole bunch of fun as well. And this is also the entire time when the Queen Dowager is like trying to get Lymond on her side because she wants to go over to France as well. Lymond was the one that gave the signal to fire. He was in front with the ladies. So he was the lady that on the bottom of page 19, there was a very sweet armful indeed, like a young cornfield in sunlit green silk, standing alone on one side of the hilltop. Her face run with mascara and tears. She hesitated, tried to run, but then she stopped and she stretched out her hand, a supplicating arm. Was that the sign for everyone to start firing? Was that Lymond? I'm not sure. So she was wearing green. Like she had mascara. Would Lymond have gone so far as to have mascara running down his face? Or was this a real woman? It's impressive if it is. Yes, he was. Oh my gosh, I just see here. He was the one in green that rode off with Ralph Bulmer. Lymond is literally like a master disguise artist. This is creepy. Oh, it's hard to believe. Anyway, so they're all chatting, Ralph, Tom, and Will. And then Lymond comes, and I love this moment, is because like they were at their suite when Lymond arrived, a voice cut through the uproar below, and as Will has realized that Lymond is back, he's like halfway through eating his soup and just like slops it everywhere, stands up quickly and has to like clean himself up before he goes down. That is just such a cute description of a very funny way to tell the reader that Will is so excited to have Lymond around and is just wanting him to come back because he's just really enjoying this, and the goofiness of it is also just really cute, and just like how far they've come together as like two men who really know each other and know the minds of each other after going through everything in Game of Kings. But also that Will is still just so excitable around Lymond. It's great. Will's like, what did you do with him? And it's not even with Sir Ralph. And it's not even like what did you do with him? It's like, tell me the fun story of what you got up to with Sir Ralph. Because Will really believes in Lymond and knows, like, there was a point at which Tom was like, if Crawford of Lymond is lost, ... what's going to happen? Scott's just like, Will is just like, no, there's no way. Like, Lymond is coming back alive. Like, he's got so much faith in Lymond. I love it. You know it's Lymond when his voice has an air of mild surprise. Anything with the word mild, that is Lymond speaking. And when Dunnett uses the word mild, she doesn't mean mild, she means mild probably physically, but we know that there's actually a lot of emotion behind Lymond when the word mild is used. Like, it's not mild. It's intensity brought down. Or his voice is pleasant. That's just like, if Lymond's voice is pleasant, he's basically just playing with you. And you know what? This is such a sweet scene. I was thinking about this when I was reading it the other day. It's such a sweet scene because this is really what I wanted at the end of Game of Kings and didn't get it. We launched straight into Queen's Play in like a completely different environment and with very new characters. So coming back to this and now having that sort of, it's almost like an epilogue to Game of Kings. Like, oh, this was the fun that happened afterwards. They kept playing around with the English and Will and Lymond had lots of fun together. Tom Erskine was still like, oh dear God. So I now appreciate it so much more coming back to reading it now. It's just so much sweeter. Lymond's like, I undressed him, I believe. What do you mean you believe? You know exactly what you did. Stop. He just like says things so, he plays things down a lot. And I honestly think he didn't know what else to do. He's like, I'm on the back of this horse, I may as well just take his clothes off. Why not? Nicholas Durand is like just listening to this whole exchange and just like talking with Lymond, and they don't even know who each other are. Well, actually Lymond totally knows who he is, but they just sort of go about talking about stuff straight into it. No small talk. And talking French as well. Like Lymond slips into French really quickly. And I just love it how it says here, no, Lymond used the same tongue. So instead of saying no, Lymond switched into using French. He just Dunnett says used the same tongue. And there's not a single word in this book and not a single sentence that isn't interesting to read, is what I'm trying to say. Like, everything is just like, oh, that's clever. That's a clever sentence. So we find out that Lymond was wearing a whole bunch of makeup on his face. I just wanted to fool this English captain. Tom, being straight to business, basically says that Nell of Kesford was killed. I really love this line. The eyes of the man Lymond, and Sir William Scott met. Will is not a man here, just Lymond apparently. But I love it how their eyes meet because it's just cute to see that Lymond and Will look to each other as the first port of call for when they want to, when something happens. Like, they're like, they didn't know obviously that this woman had died, and immediately they look at each other to like say, oh shit. And it's just cute that they did that, especially because it looks like it was Will's fault because Frances told you not to let her Isa bring her. And so Lymond was also in that moment being like, what have you done, Will? Seriously, I told you so. Like, don't do this. So great. I love it how Will Scott is just called Sir William Scott. It kind of feels like Dunnett's making fun of Will here. The man Lymond and Sir William Scott. And yeah, I just really love this domestic Lymond business that we never got. Like Lymond eating soup and sitting down with the guys. Like, just like the little things. Yeah, it's just such a great like epilogue to Game of Kings. And this whole time Lymond's been standing up because he's like a nobleman at heart and has been raised the proper way, and he's like, I haven't been introduced to this person even though I know who he is, but I can't introduce myself because that's not the proper way, and I'm waiting for someone to introduce me so I can sit down and eat my bloody soup. Someone introduce me. Then we have this scene which I had some questions over. So they all go to sleep. Lymond being super protective of himself, and like there's a new person in this room that he doesn't know, and that is Nicholas Durand. Will Scott falls asleep and starts snoring instantly. Tom Erskine is definitely asleep. Will's description here, his soft palate buzzed and rattled with his dreams. It is the most poetic way to say he was snoring. So why did I laugh at that so much? Nicholas gets up, and I immediately fell in love with Nicholas with this one line. So he goes up and sits next to Lymond, who is like somewhere near the fire, It's times like these that I really wish Matt was here and that Matt hadn't died, because he would totally be here if he was alive. And I totally think that Lymond thinks about that sometimes. See, Matt would have introduced Lymond to Nicholas Durand straight away. That's what was missing. So yeah, I fell in love with Nicholas because the first thing he says to Lymond is he sits down to Lymond pretending to be asleep. Yeah, we knew Lymond's not sleeping when there is a stranger in the room that he doesn't really know. Like, he's not that unguarded. He says, this play acting today, it entertains you. As if like this Nicholas guy is really trying to get to the heart of who is this Lymond character, and I'm just going to call him out on this. And I just really liked the fact that we are not getting small talk with these people. They basically launch into like a discussion of politics and what's going on and in Scotland at the time, and its loyalties and its power, and the Knights of the Order, and we get mentions of Malta, the Bishop of Rome, Emperor Charles V of Rome, I assume, and Turkey. Nicholas Durand gets straight to it. Like, he's asking the questions that I've always wanted someone to just ask Lymond, because I'm like, what are your intentions, Lymond? Who are you underneath it? And Nicholas is asking those questions. And one of them is, if I made you a leader today of 1,500 mercenaries, for whom and for what would you fight? Like, such a good question. Like, such a good theoretical to understand a person. But anyway, Lymond laughs at that because he's just like, no, please stop trying to recruit me. Go away. Everyone wants to recruit me. I just got rid of my 100 men who were following me. I don't want another. Stop trying to box me in. Such an insightful comment that Lymond makes. And he's like, if I had 1,500 soldiers, like, Lymond realizes that he couldn't do anything in Scotland with 1,500 soldiers because A, if he used them to fight for the Queen Mother, there would be civil war. And if he used them to fight against the Queen Mother, there would be civil war. And that's mainly because, A, Lymond would be really good with what he did, so whichever side he sided with in Scotland, either the Queen Mother faction or the non-Queen Mother faction, which is Governor Arran or someone, whatever side he sided with would probably be the winning side and would create civil war, and he knows he can't do that. So he can't support anyone with any sort of power because, yeah, it would cause many, many problems. He knows how good he is, and he's not hiding it from Nicholas. Nicholas is like, okay, well then use your mind elsewhere. Where does your manhood suggest? But Lymond says he wants to go and meet Gabriel, or Graham Reed Mallett's sister, Gilletta, and not necessarily with 1,500 mercenary soldiers at my back. I'm very confused about this comment, to be honest, because, like, how does Lymond know about her? She's supposed to be a teenager, so how impressive can she really be? And why does Lymond want to meet her? But immediately, Nicholas agrees for some reason and is happy with that answer. And he's like, yes, you need to meet Gabriel and his sister. This is so weird. I'm so intrigued about Gabriel and his sister, and not necessarily with 1,500 mercenary soldiers at my back. Lymond's just like, can I just go by myself? So anyway, the Kerrs do come to take revenge for the loss of Nell of Kesford, and come into this place in the middle of the night, and they all defend themselves fine, to the point where the Kerrs have to then flee back to Kesford Castle. And once again, they can't pursue these, well, these aren't English, these are the Scottish that have defected to England. They can't pursue them because they have to pretend to be the injured party, otherwise they're going to get in trouble with the Queen Dowager. Spill blood on a prostitute's grave. So old-fashioned. You can tell that Lymond and Will are just like, this is so dumb. Like, why are we... Like, they don't really believe that they shouldn't be defending prostitutes. Which is all because of Molly, let's just be real. Like, I do like that no one here is particularly... Like, none of the main characters so far are particularly affected by religion, except for the fact that religion is literally defining all of the political structure of Europe at the time. But like, there's no individuals who seem to get their morality from God distinctly, and maybe that will change in this book. But I'm very glad that Lymond and Will like just sort of have their own characters. The final line of this chapter, once I've said this a few times, but this is like the greatest way to sum up Lymond, is he regards boredom as the one and mighty enemy of his soul and will succeed in conquering it if he survives the experience. Yeah, that definitely sums up Queen's Play. Like, it sums it up. Thank you for the one-line summary of the book you just wrote. So the Chevalier, so Nicholas has gleaned from his discussion with Lymond the night before that Lymond basically is going where the entertainment takes him, but also is keeping in mind the political structure of the land. But mainly is just sort of following his own whims at this point, demonstrated by his desire to go and meet maybe Gilletta. Maybe that's where he figured that out from. Or at least he really wants freedom to at least do what he wants, but he wants to do something. And so, and there's that restlessness about Lymond. And I think, yeah, Nicholas Durand has like totally sort of figured that out. Boredom is the mighty enemy of his soul, and it might kill him. You know what, if I had to then try to sell this book to people, because I've tried to get a bunch of people into reading this book, and it's really hard to say. It's a historical fiction set around the time of the young Queen Mary in the 1500s in Scotland. It would probably be best just to show them this line and say this sums up the main character and just let them make a decision. Because if I read that and I was like, oh, that's the main character, I would be like, yeah, give me the book. Anyway, I just really loved that chapter. It was great because I had all of these fun elements. Lymond pretending and play acting, Will and Lymond having bants together, like bros, and then a new character who was challenging Lymond, like all of the great elements. So I will see you next time.